Well, I get the HR piece,
But you can double check that tonight with
Got that
the
check.
staff.
But I left my number with them.
Yeah,
I've already had
This-
this.
this-
they've got those.
That's good to know. So it's only the
Is that
new
the mini one?
after 2023.
So I got that for that
It's
effective date.
ingenious, because when they did it like in the 70s. Some technical plans, plans.
Yeah.
You gotta sign off on, yes, no, I get it. Okay, so it is the 4th of May, it is a little after 6 p.m., let's just call it. March, rather, I'm wishful thinking,
Didn't even think about it.
the 6th of March, 4th of March.
Wish it was mine.
Little bit after 6 p.m., this will commence the Buckley City Council study session. First up, well, everybody is here. Is Councilmember Bender online?
She is not.
She's not online, so everybody's here. So you should have an updated agenda that came in this morning. And it's just an item. The audit exit conference. And everybody should have a packet that came, that's on your in front of your spot with the audit information. City Administrator. Finance Director.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. We are here tonight, yes, to do the exit conference for the 2022 to 2023 audit. As one of the council members asked, isn't this the one we just started? And it is. It is the one we just did the entrance conference for in January. So before you, you have a double-sided one-page exit recommendations. And the auditors will go over this information as well. So that's the exit recommendations that the auditors are making. And then the larger packet is information regarding the exit conference and then the draft accountability and financial audit reports themselves. And so we also have Jen and Kirk from the State Auditor's Office online tonight to do a presentation and walk through the exit conference.
Yep.
Are they there, Jen?
Yeah.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Kirk. I am here. We don't have video sharing capabilities. I don't know if you want to see our faces or.
Do you have a
Yeah.
presentation that you wanted to share on the
We
screen?
do. Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Next time.
Oh, 1 second. We're just having a little technical difficulty. We'll get you up there in just a second.
Oh, that's okay. Yep. Courtney Amundsen is here too, and I think she was the one who's going to share the screen if
Oh, cool. Oh, great.
oh, it looks like you got it maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, if you'd like to see us too, that's fine. But yeah, it just doesn't allow us to share our videos. But maybe you don't want to see us, that's fine too.
We'd love to see your faces. Yeah.
Okay. We're smiling, I promise.
I get it. I get it.
The one to the middle school, back here by 6 and
I got video. There we go. Perfect.
Thanks. Ready to get started with the exit conference.
Video, so it says it's
Yep, I think
disabled.
we have your presentations up now. We're just getting the microphone set up to make sure it's a little loud enough for everyone to hear.
Okay, we will wait until.
There we go. We are on.
Okay. Well, thank you all for taking the time to meet with us. You've already done introductions for Kirk and Jen, who you've worked with Kirk for the last couple of audits, and then Jen, you've been working with her since this audit got started, I think at the end of December, early January. I came in at the tail end of this audit, so I just wanted to join to introduce myself. At the start of this audit, Christina Baylor was the audit manager for Team Everett, who conducted your audit this year. She received a promotion at the end of December that she is now our assistant director of local audit, which is amazing. In doing so, unfortunately, she stepped away from the Everett team in order to be able to manage multiple teams now. And so I am the newly appointed audit manager for Team Everett. So I just wanted to be able to join tonight to meet everybody that you have, that Kirk and Jen have been working with, and just introduce myself, since I'll be working with you in future audits. So just wanted to be able to put a face with a name. So as mentioned in the introduction, we are here to present the exit results for your most recent audit. And there is a packet that has been provided, so thank you for sharing that. You don't need to have the packet in front of you. We don't intend to go through slide by slide or page by page, excuse me. The information that we are presenting summarizes all the information that is included in the packet for you to be able to take should you have any follow-up questions or need to refer back to what the results are. So we'll refer to the packet from time to time where important information is included, just so you have that for future reference. So with that, the first question really is, why are we here? Why is an audit important? Why are the results important for you to understand? And so it's really important for you to hear the results of the audit, just to really help you understand, what's going on within your city, to make sure that you understand kind of what we found, what we looked at, to help you give better information for, as you're making decisions about the city, for you to provide more information to your citizens if there's any questions. And so it's just really a great opportunity for you to utilize your audits to just help build trust in your city. As an independent organization, we conduct over 2,700 audits every year, and we have the opportunity to provide those results so that you can share with whoever, with either, information needed to make decisions within your city, or if there's any questions from your citizens. This is just a great way to be able to share what's going on, as well as help fine-tune some things. If there's information that we identified or items that we identified, it just kind of helps fine-tune either things that you can improve upon, or gives you assurance that what you're doing is already you're doing well. So our goal today is really to make sure that you understand the results of the audit. We encourage you to feel free to ask questions as we go throughout the audit process, or the exit conference, excuse me. But at the conclusion, we also have time for questions set aside. So either works for us. But with that, I am going to turn it over to Jen to discuss more specifically what we looked at this year.
Thanks, Courtney. So we conducted an accountability audit for the city covering the period of January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2023. The purpose of an accountability audit is to gauge whether the city complied with state laws, regulations, contracts, grant agreements, and its own policies and procedures. And in an accountability audit, we also look at whether, in general, the city has adequate controls to safeguard public funds. So you'll see the heading results in brief, and that's very good news. In the areas we examined, we found that city operations complied in all material respects with applicable state laws, regulations, and its own policies, and provided adequate controls over the safeguarding of public resources. So great job. Of course, in keeping with general auditing practices, we don't examine every transaction, activity, policy, internal control, or area. That'd be a really long and expensive audit. So no information is provided on the areas that were not examined. And we use a risk-based audit approach for the city in order to select areas for testing. During the period, we looked at cash receipting, so timeliness and completeness of deposits, voids, and adjustments. Accounts receivable with a focus on utility billing, adjustments, and collections. So we looked at, utility meters, whether they were added into the system, how bills were calculated, how payments were applied, deposits applied, etc. We looked at the city's cost allocation plan to make sure that indirect costs like payroll and administrative costs were applied correctly to different funds. Treasury activities, a new thing for a lot of our audits this year is monitoring of banking activity. We look through bank statements, identify transactions, and look further just to make sure they're for allowable purposes and properly approved. We always look at financial conditions, so reviewing for indications of financial distress. And we also look at compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, so minutes, meetings, executive sessions, etc. And with, again, great job to the city. And back to, I think Kirk is going to
Yeah.
take it over.
I'll handle the financial stuff here. So another big audit we did was the financial statement audit. Obviously, the city of Buckley prepares financial statements for external users, your citizens, bonding agencies, and other interested parties who may want to know about the financial operations of the city. So the purpose of any financial statement audit is, the ultimate purpose is to give an opinion on the financial statements. And that opinion really, tells those users, yes, these statements can be relied upon and they are materially accurate. They can materially represent what's actually going on at the city. So in our audit report that covers 2 years, it's 2022 and 2023, we did give an opinion on those financial statements. And the good news is that you got that clean, unmodified opinion. That's just the opinion that you want to get on those statements. Something that makes the audit reports a little bit confusing, though, is we actually give 2 opinions in that audit report. The reason why is because there's 2 different methods that the city could do to prepare financial statements. You can either prepare financial statements using the regulatory basis of accounting, which is basically using our BARS manual. And really, that is the method that most cities, most counties, in most like other special purpose districts around the state prepare their financial statements. So that's how City of Buckley prepares their financial statements. The other option is preparing financial statements in accordance with the US GAAP. So those statements are more complex. They take more manpower to put together and are just more complicated. So that's why a lot of governments in the state choose not to prepare those. However, as an auditing agency, we are required to give an opinion on US GAAP statements. So because you didn't prepare US GAAP statements, we give what's called an adverse opinion. But on the statements you did prepare, you get that clean, unmodified opinion. A little bit confusing, but just know that, City of Buckley is not different than most other cities or counties in the state. It's very similar to what's going on at most of these places. Beyond our opinion, we also, because we do our audits in accordance with government auditing standards, we are required to report on the internal controls behind how those financial statements are prepared. So if Sandy, when preparing the financial statements, somehow just magically guessed every figure and got it all correct, yes, you might get that clean, unmodified opinion, but we would be required to report any internal control deficiencies we identified. The good news is that during our review, when we looked at the internal controls behind how those city prepared financials, how the reviews took place and whatnot, we did not identify any internal control deficiencies that we determined to be like significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. And then beyond that, we also didn't notice any kind of non-compliance. So non-compliance with laws or external regulations that were material to the financial statements as well. So really all really good results. Couple other things is we did not identify any material misstatements. So those would be those large significant misstatements, that would be, we'd be required to report on. So nothing there. We did identify a couple immaterial items, it's kind of small things. The city corrected most of the misstatements that we identified. So the final published statements have most of those items corrected. There's a couple minor things that are carrying forward to future years. So the city is going to work on those for future audit reporting. But we do agree that those misstatements don't affect like the readability or won't like sway a user in any way whatsoever. They're just small items to keep in mind going forward. So those items are prepared in the packet for you. I believe it's on the 3rd page if you'd like to see what those look like. One other thing, when we do our financial statement audit, when we're looking through the financial statements, we are required to follow up on some required risks that require additional procedures when we do our audit work. And one of those things is the management override of controls. So essentially, if management were to override controls and attempt to, post false entries or things like that, would that be detected? And so we did look at some journal entries. We looked at some different procedures to make sure that there was a second set of eyes on financial transactions, and we didn't identify anything to report to you. So really just good news. All right, so next step, more good news. At the beginning of the audit here, we did prepare an estimate of how much we thought everything would be, and we are pleased to report that we are going to be coming in about $2,600 under what we anticipated. I know it's not a huge amount, but any time that we can, not use all the funds and give some money back, we're very excited to do that. And really what that comes down to is Sandy just being very efficient with getting information to us and just being very readily available for meetings anytime we needed help with something, or being, walking Jen through her work and helping out tie worksheets to worksheets, figure out what was going on. So really appreciate Sandy's help. That really was a big factor in this. And then also just having us do the audit remotely, so we didn't have to come on site. A lot of travel savings that fed into that. So next audit, next big thing, we are going to be right back again just in a few months. So we're catching the city up. This was the 22-23 audit. We are planning on doing the fiscal year 2024 audit just in a few months, fall of 2025. So it's going to cover the same areas, accountability for 2024 and a financial statement audit for 2024. And we have a cost estimate for that in our packet there, in the exit packet for budgeting purposes. So next steps are the reports that you have in front of you that you have are draft. They have not been published to our website quite yet. We are going to publish those on the 6th. So pretty quick. It's going to come out on Thursday the 6th. So those will come out, and those will be available for the public and any external groups to review and take a look at. When those reports are published, we do have a survey that's sent out as well to a couple key members of staff. If you're involved in the audit process, please fill that out. Let us know how we did. Give us any feedback on what we did well or areas you'd like to see different in the future or going forward with our audit procedures. Any feedback is good. We try to improve every audit. So anything you can provide to us about what you really liked or anything you'd like to see different, it really helps our services. And then one other quick thing, we didn't have any big recommendations. We do have a bunch of like small recommendations we did provide to management. So I know that's kind of the homework for Sandy and Courtney. I know they're already working. A lot of it is policy revisions, policy changes, things like that they're already working on updating. So that'll be kind of the next steps for hopefully by the time we come back, all those policies will be updated and we'll be good to go there. So with that, we just thank you again. This is my 2nd year now working with Courtney and Sandy, and just I know Jen had a great experience working with those two, and just I did last year as well. So just thank you so much for all the hard work with Sandy and Courtney and getting everything to us and being so pleasant to work with. We really appreciated all your assistance, and it just really helped with getting the audit done timely. So we look forward to coming back here in a few months, but in the meantime, are there any questions that we can answer for you about this audit or future audits?
Questions from the council?
No.
We would thank you for your presentation,
Mhm.
all the work you did, and how it was presented with the recommendations
Mhm.
for the city staff to work on.
Yeah. All right. Well, if there's no questions, we'll let you go. I know you have a busy workshop meeting tonight, so we'll let you go. But if you have any questions that come up as you're reading anything, or even just, have any questions throughout the year, Courtney's available, I'm available. Feel free to reach out at any time. We're always around. So, all right.
Thank you,
Thank
Kirk
you.
and Jen. And it was, as it was last year too, it was a real pleasure working with your team, and we're happy to have you guys staying on for the next year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
All
in a
right.
few months, right?
That's right. In a few months. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great job.
We should do like a punch card, like have 2 audits, get 1 free or something.
At this rate, you're right.
Yes, and they're back to back. But we are caught up and we will be on schedule on an annual cycle now, so that will be much easier. And having it be my years when I was here was much easier.
Yes. Full clean audit opinion.
Mhm.
Outstanding.
Right.
He says a couple months. I don't want a couple months to come that quick.
I don't either.
It's still March.
Yeah,
yes, there you go.
A little bit longer, yeah. Thank you, council.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you. Right.
Next item on here would be the Doc Tate Pavilion. In your packet, there's renderings, there's all kinds of items.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Tonight, we are giving hopefully the final update on the Doc Tate Pavilion. I'm joined tonight here in person by Brianne Folks. She is the new Executive Director for the Rails to Trails Coalition. And virtually, I believe we have both Shayla Miles, the previous Executive Director, who is still very much involved with this capital project, and Michael Faulkner, who is with Bruce Dees and Associates. So quick recap, this pavilion project was originally proposed pre-2021 at a different location. Starting in 2022, we had it at the new location and approved the construction agreement for the Rails to Trails Coalition to fundraise and then construct a pavilion along with some interpretive panel signage. They have completed their fundraising and have applied for building permits. Part of that construction agreement involved having a final opportunity for council to review the final design, which is what we're doing tonight. So we have Michael Faulkner, and if you would just make sure he's also a co-host. Perfect. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
And he is going to take us through some of the graphics that were included in your packet for review. And then we have an opportunity for questions and answers, of course.
Okay, great. Yeah, share here. Y'all see that?
Yes.
All right, great. So this first slide here, we see a plan view of the orientation of Doc Tate Pavilion. In alignment with the Foothills Trail and the newly constructed Buckley Trailhead. This is at the intersection of Jefferson Avenue and SR 410. The angled orientation of the pavilion is in alignment with the view of Mount Rainier. So here's kind of an arrival view looking southwest. So from here you can see a new concrete entry monument wall, which will welcome users to the pavilion and identify the Foothills National Recreational Trail. We also have some interpretive railroad tracks there that are repurposed. We'll have a nice open concrete pavilion lined with some donor benches and a nice steel pavilion anchoring the project. And surrounding the plaza and the trail is interpretive signage that is being designed by Parametrics. So next view here is a bird's eye view, so you can again see some of the major components with the pavilion, the plaza, the benches, the interpretive signage. You see a bit of a different angle of the entry monument sign, which shows the donor signage. So this will be a donor wall, thanking and identifying those who have contributed to helping fund this project that will honor Doc Tate and the Foothills Trail. So next view, so here's just another view looking southeast. So this will be oriented towards Mount Rainier. The pavilion will be provided with lighting and power. So this will be a nice open plaza and pavilion for small community gatherings and events. So here's some details of the pavilion. So it is 20 foot by 30 foot. So it covers approximately 600 square feet. The pavilion at its peak is 14 foot 9 inches. And then at the lowest point of the roof, it is 9 foot 6 inches clear. And we have beefed up the columns. So those are 10-inch square steel columns supporting the pavilion. Here we see a rendering of the pavilion. So the frame color will be coastal khaki. The roof color will be Tudor brown. Those colors were selected to align with the restroom that has recently been constructed at the trailhead. And then underneath the roof, there is some paneling that will add some additional structure and thickness and structural integrity to the roof and provide a nice finished underside of the steel pavilion. Again, to some of the signage here, that's been designed with parametrics. You can see here the calling out of the welcome wall and the donor wall, where donors' names will be accentuated in leaves on the wall. Here is the layout of the interpretive signage. So sign 1 will speak to the legacy of Doc Tate. Sign 2 will showcase the trail map. Sign 3 will speak to the history of the Foothills Trail. Sign 4 will speak to the history of the city of Buckley. 5 will be for flora and fauna, and 6 will speak to local attractions and areas to explore. Here's some of the current layout of the signage. Panel 1, speaking to Doc Tate. You can see panel 3 against that, speaking to the history of the Foothills Trail. Then some of the vertical signage here, you see the trail map, the Buckley sign, flora and fauna, and areas to explore. So that is the latest update and graphics for the project. I can stop sharing and take questions or keep slides up.
Questions from council? Before we continue, I want to make sure that there are people that are sitting here that their families know who Doc Tate, they've heard about Doc Tate. I remember only met him one time and didn't even really meet him. My father, that was his doctor. He says, hey, I got to go to Doc Tate. You want to go with me? So we show up over here in downtown Buckley to, anyway, so he was the town doctor. He was it. And I remember him coming to the house because he had this black, like doctors used to do back in the day with the black bag that, you know, treat the ill patients. I mean, was an old town country doctor who's obviously revered here, and people are, so I want you, all to say is, was he a medical doctor? Yes, he was. But the only thing I ever knew him by in the early 70s, you know, when I was a kid, was Doc Tate. That's what everybody called him. And Kenny, you can go home and ask Dad, and Mackenzie can, and yes. So that's what it was. So this is going to be a beautiful project. And I just, you know, there are people that are not here anymore that would love this.
I really love the signage on the areas to explore. Is that just like areas from the trail, like just parts of the trail?
I think the goal was to get people from the trail into downtown Buckley.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Encourage, just so people know what's around them,
Mhm.
in the area.
So it has the businesses of the downtown.
It doesn't have specific businesses, but,
Okay.
the type of business that.
Oh,
you can
okay.
Go
Okay.
find. Yeah.
They have, for example, an ice cream cone and a coffee shop just to show that there's food and beverage down Main
Oh,
Street.
okay.
But the idea was that the sign would hopefully be timeless. So
Mm.
regardless of what businesses may be on Main Street, it'll draw people down towards Main Street.
And I'll chime in here. This is Shayla, former executive director. This panel in particular builds off some work that was done in 2024 with not only the city of Buckley, but all of the areas along the trail, doing some wayfinding signage to encourage economic development. And this sign is going to change slightly. I know Aaron Snodgrass had selected some different colors for the actual icons themselves, but the intention is this can change over time, and really it's to direct people and encourage them to stop and patronize the different businesses of Buckley. We're really proud of this panel.
Thank you.
This is like just maybe it's the teacher in me. On panel 4, where it says less than 150 years ago, my only wondering about that is if these are going to be up for years and years and years, less than 150 years ago won't be. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm just bored at the wording of it.
Yeah, and I'll just note that these, you're not seeing the final iterations. So we can talk about, if the council would like to see the final iterations just to review, but really, this is the result of literally months and months of different iterations of work, and there's actually a new version of most of these panels. And so we're working on capturing all of those items and making those edits. So thank you. And you can send them my way, send them Courtney's way. She can get them to me if you see more.
Councilmember Green.
One more, like, just dumb nitpicky thing. Under the flora and fauna, you might consider adding like elk to that too, because we have a sizable elk herd that comes through here that people just love, and we're kind of, sometimes known for those when they're crawling through. So yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor.
What do we know? You guys probably know, maybe not right off the top of your head, how tall the donor wall is. The main reason I ask is because we've had concerns with the blind spot that we've created with the bathroom. And so we're gonna put one directly across from it. It's probably not gonna be an issue, but that might be something we could adjust or shrink down a little bit if need be. I don't know what that's gonna look like, but just the way it shows on the layout that might create for the bicyclists that should be stopping at the road.
Right. With the Jefferson right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as we kind of keep that in mind going.
Mike, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, I believe it's 4'6". We might have even lowered it lower than that. But I can stop sharing and look at that real quick.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes right now, it's not that relevant, but just as, whatever that looks like when we actually install it, if we can keep it as tight. I mean, we want it to be, readable, but.
Do you have a certain height that you'd like us to keep it under? Do you have parameters for that in what you've learned, lessons learned from the bathrooms?
I'm not really, probably just as short as possible, but not making it obviously where people have to stoop down or you have to expand the lettering to make it readable, but just something to keep in mind. I mean, if it's 4 foot, I mean, that's on a bicycle, I think they're going to be elevated enough. Or even most folks that aren't super short will be able to see over it at least.
Yeah, it is 4'6".
Okay, that's just above ground.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, should be good then. It's like a sheet of plywood standing up. It should be able to see over that.
So I think to alleviate what Councilmember Burbank talked about with the 150 years ago, without amending a bunch of language, maybe this was established in 2025.
Yeah, specific date.
Some type of spot. And then if people really want to think with their brain, they could understand what they're reading.
Do the math.
And they know, yes,
Sorry.
that would be simple.
Okay.
Anything else, council?
Looks good.
That's good.
When is groundbreaking day?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, we can hardly wait to do it, but we are working, Shayla and Michael might speak us more, but, we have the contractor picked out and we're waiting for their timeline.
Yes.
And so we haven't received that yet, but when we do, of course, you will all hear about that and we'll have to celebrate in a great way. We'll make that plans for that, yeah.
Bottle of champagne.
Yes, something.
Yeah, groundbreaking is spring, so we hope soon. We'll definitely probably do something to commemorate the groundbreaking, and then we will certainly be planning some sort of community celebration for the opening. And definitely will ensure we work closely with Courtney, with Aaron, with anyone else on the city staff on the guest list, and making sure everyone who needs to know is invited, because this has been like more than a decade in the making. As we know, Don Partington, the late great Don Partington worked on this project. Many community volunteers have worked on this project over the years, and we're just so grateful that we're almost at the finish line. Very exciting.
Pat Johnson will be another one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And every one of the people who are part of the senior center that come here, that are from here, they know who Dock Tate is. They don't have to be a big rails and trails person. Maybe they are already. I know former mayor is reaching out to those people to bring them in. To see something come to fruition that's been going on for 10 years. It's gonna be a big deal. Anything else from council so we can release these people to their families? Hearing and seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buddy.
See you all, yeah.
Next item would be zoning text amendment changes, and I think I know what this is about.
Thank you. So tonight we are reviewing the first of what will be many text amendments made to our municipal code in order to come into compliance with some state mandates, as well as our comprehensive plan that was approved in December of last year. First up is the accessory dwelling unit, the ADU regulations, specifically Title 19. I want to preface by saying that when finalized, these specific regulations will trickle into other sections of the municipal code as well. But what I wanted to first direct your attention to are some policy decisions that we can make that most directly impact Title 19 and will impact later titles once those decisions are made. So quick history, right now, our existing regulations do not meet state law. And so we are having to rely on the state law as written in our CW versus our own code, because those are now in effect. Specifically with the recent passing, or not so recent anymore, but the House Bill 1337, which was required compliance in January of this year, we are now required to allow for 2 ADUs per lot anywhere where a single family home is allowed. Previously, it was 1. It has eliminated the owner occupancy requirement. So previously in the primary dwelling unit, an owner had to occupy that in order to have an ADU, which could be rented out. Now you could, in theory, purchase a home in an ADU or build a home with 2 ADUs and rent all of them out. So there's no longer any owner occupancy requirement. It allows ADUs to be sold as condominiums. That was not the case previously. So an individual or a homeowner couldn't sell just their ADU. Now they can. It requires that we reduce our impact fees. The fees for ADUs cannot exceed 50% of those for the primary home. So we will be updating our taxes, rates, and fees in order to align with that. It limits parking requirements. With smaller lots needing only 1 space per unit, we used to have more discretion to allow more parking for ADUs. Now it limits it to 1. Eases development restrictions. So anywhere where there is currently a structure, for example, a detached garage, in some cases even a shed, let's say a boathouse that maybe isn't compliant with all of our codes. So it's pre-existing, but maybe it's encroaching on a setback. Previously, we would say that you can't convert that to intensify the use because it's an illegal or non-conforming building. Now, if the building exists, it can be converted to an ADU if it already exists, so long as the footprint isn't enlarged in a way that increases the nonconformity. If it's within that existing footprint, it can be remodeled in that footprint to become an ADU, and we can no longer restrict that. And it restricts public street improvement requirements. So we cannot require for homeowners to upgrade roads as a condition of building an ADU. So with some of those changes are mandatory. All of the ones that I just mentioned are mandatory, but there are a couple of areas where we have some flexibility. First is for density management. So ADUs, we have to allow 2 anywhere where there's in a single family residence. I have a list of zones here if you would like, of where we currently allow for single family residences, townhomes, and duplexes. We do not have to allow ADUs in addition to a duplex or a triplex. So in several zones, we allow single family and duplexes, or duplexes, triplexes, and single family homes. And anywhere where a developer chooses to build a duplex or triplex, we could create a policy that says they can't have an ADU too. Or we could continue to allow ADUs in all single family residential zones, regardless of if it's a duplex or a triplex, which would result in 3 to 5 units on a lot rather than the required 3 mandated by the House bill. So in doing so, by not requiring them, for example, in conjunction with a duplex, you could have 2 units versus what is allowed right now under 3 if they were to build a single family residence and 2 ADUs. The pros for allowing for ADUs to continue to be in addition to a duplex and triplex is that you're spreading out the density. And so in spreading out the density, our density calculations that we discussed last year that are based off of affordability. So the ones where we were looking at increasing the density pretty significantly in some of our multifamily zones. If we spread the density out and allow ADUs everywhere, even where there's a duplex or a triplex, we can change that calculation a bit in order to factor in more ADUs throughout the city. That also, though, on the flip side, increases density everywhere. And so that's really a decision for council to make. Do you want to see more density everywhere, or would you like to continue to plan for increasing the density higher in certain zones? So rather than going, for example, to that 30 dwelling units per acre, if we allowed ADUs everywhere, we may only have to go to 20 dwelling units per acre as a max density in some of those multifamily zones in order to meet our affordability calculation. So that's one policy consideration. The other one is basic design standards. So state law also prohibits any design standards specific to an ADU that is more restrictive than that which would exist for a single family residence. Right now in Buckley, we have no design standards for residential, and that's not unusual. Most cities don't have design standards for residential homes, but that is certainly something that we could consider implementing. And some examples of that would be a pitched roof, but keep in mind, more modern houses have flat roofs. So, but a pitched roof, maybe porches, or there's a variety of things we could consider if you wanted to look at possibly having some type of design standards, but that would apply to all new construction as well as existing construction. So if anybody was wanting to remodel their home in the future, anything that they touched would need to come into conformance with whatever the new design standards are. So another policy consideration, the risk is that you could have a bunch of ADUs, really of any form, so long as they comply with the minimum standards of the International Building Code for size and utility hookups, but they could look any which way. So.
I got a quick question on 2 under the policy considerations. It says ADU design cannot be more restricted than single family. Can we require it? This whole thing, we just have to allow it by code. Nobody going to be forced to put ADUs in their backyard.
No.
Somebody could say, I want to put 2 ADUs in my backyard. I happen to know 2 people who do this right now. One of which is somebody, a lot of people probably know his name if I spit it out up in King County and selling the sound. You don't have to do it, but if you want to, can council set a design standard to align with what is that, the house that they're putting the ADUs on, the same thing, the same pitch?
Oh.
Right. Go ahead.
So what I'm saying is we have a home with a, let's call it a Rambler with a regular pitched roof and whatnot. I would not want to see one of these Seattle-centric box things,
Yeah.
square things, modern things that go up. Can we do our code to say that the slope of the roof has to match that place?
My understanding is that because we do not require any design for that original primary residence, we cannot now impose a design on the accessory dwelling unit, because that's what the most codes did previously, is they did say the ADU has to mimic the character and design of the primary dwelling unit. My understanding is that this code amendment, or the new House bill changed that. So now if you don't have a design for the primary that's outlined in your code, you cannot impose arbitrary regulations on the ADU.
So currently, we don't have any code for residential housing. It can look like anything. So if we want to do that, then we need to create that for all.
That's untenable. That's can't be done. I mean,
It would be for new construction as well as remodels. So I do think that we could look into it. And if it's something that council's interested, I would propose that we're working with Framework Consulting for the ADU regulations specifically, as well as some other code amendments, but they're really focused on this because of the requirement that we comply. They can look at some options and then vet it through the Planning Commission, and we can come back with some recommendations if that's something you want to look at. But keep in mind that that would apply to all new construction.
there is, I imagine it's permitted because it's the biggest ugly looking thing I've seen sticking out from a house off of Main would be South C Street
Yeah, that big jalopy thing.
in the backyard. And it is a cone. I mean, it almost looks like a nuclear reactor.
It's a watchtower.
Yes, I mean I'm all for, I mean, the state, this is one thing the state has mandated that I'm not screaming about. Because if somebody wants to put ADUs on their yard and to provide a home for someone and to make money for themselves, great. Outstanding. But now they've said no, unless we want to do a design standard for all new construction. And so I guess my question's been answered, and okay, fine. Councilmember Green, you had your hand up.
Yeah, quick question on the impact fee. Says ADUs cannot exceed 50% of the fees imposed on the principal dwelling unit. Does that mean 50% for like both ADUs, like together 50% or 50% per ADU?
Per ADU.
Okay.
And so that would be our GFC connections. So we can't charge a full GFC for an ADU. We're going to actually create, I believe we already did, a special fee just for ADUs separate and apart from single family, multifamily. And then there's an ADU fee that cannot exceed 50% of a single family residential fee for any GFCs as well as building permits.
Councilmember Asano.
I got a few topics, but this one, back to that. So do they allow shared utilities?
I believe that there is a way
If you're
to
not
do,
selling it separate.
Yeah.
Would there not be any
Well-
impact fees in, say if I was gonna connect the utilities to my
Mhm.
house?
let me look into that because I know that
Right,
the
that's it.
rules have been, there's been conversation about it because of the ability to condominiumize. The answer used to be no, any separate structure had to be on its own utilities, but there are a lot of examples of ADUs within an existing structure that they've converted into an ADU. So I'll look in and see if there's any clarification on if it's required.
Because like, I've been doing, I've did a handful of these now
Mhm.
in like other cities, Beering and stuff. And they allow the utility sharing
Mhm.
And
to an extent. But
yeah,
if you're gonna sell it separately, I believe then you have to have separate utilities, but if it's
Shared then.
shared, then you're gonna keep it as part, then I don't think that would even have to pay the impact fees, right? Or am I wrong?
If it's shared, then there would be no additional GFC.
It would just be your building.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then back to the thing you were talking, they were talking about with design standards last night, and how the planning commission having like a high workload, through the year of trying to get the the ADU in place and then work on if there was design standards you know what I mean, after fact. Instead of trying to tackle it all as one.
Yeah, because it's a
It's a
big,
big task.
it's a
to
big
tackle,
load. Yeah,
And
this
they
is,
have a heavy workload this year.
and it's, you're well, in my mind, for two separate reasons, the utilities alone. That becomes it becomes quite a mess. If the state's saying you can condominiumize these units, then we, in my view, as a city, need to require them to put in a separate service. If they're, the minute they go to plat it and they wanna, say, we wanna keep our house, or we wanna sell the house and we wanna just live in the ADU, whatever, that's all good. That's fine. But we've got to put some standards in place, I think, before we allow any of this. I mean, if we need to put a moratorium on this until we can get our arms around it, including planning commission, I think that's what we need to do. I'm sure the state will have a conniption fit if we try to put in a moratorium, but we need to know what we're doing. I mean, we don't want to, I can see this getting out of hand really fast. With no design standard, somebody can have a Connex delivered, boom, or two of
They
them in there.
can't do that. We can't do a shipping container. We do
Well,
have
if they wrap it
restrictions
with
for that. Well, yes.
chicken wire or whatever
It
they're
still
gonna do.
Still has to meet the design, or it still has to meet the building code.
Has to meet-
I guess the one in my backyard, I better put camouflage stuff over it.
So I'm just saying those type of things for me. So in my mind, my number one concern, and please council speak up. My number one concern is twofold, both on the safety side. Number one, I want to hear from the fire department on what they need access to these buildings. I don't, because there's nothing to stop anybody from putting up a fence or a wall or ecology blocks, and they can't get to that building to fight the fire. And on not one really more important than the other, police department need access to the doors and whatever that looks like. So those two things we need to kind of get our arms around before we start allowing willy-nilly in.
Councilmember Burgess.
So I have a question on this one. It used to be that we had 800 square feet was the maximum, correct? And so now I'm reading it as the minimum and maximum is 1,000 square feet. So it can, an ADU can only be 1,000 square feet?
I think it can be up to, right?
Well, it says minimum, maximum. You can require is 1,000 square feet.
And this is coming out of the state whack, is that correct?
I think that is supposed to read that the maximum minimum. Shall not have a gross.
Gross floor area. So it was like, so it can only be 1,000 square feet. It
Let me
can't
double
be
check that.
800 or 750 or.
And if we create our own standard, I think we can say it can be up to X percentage of the home. So that it isn't,
We can no longer do that.
well, we can't do that,
Mm-mm.
okay.
No, that was there are specific standards for the sizing. But I don't believe that it's just a flat 1,000 square feet. So I think that that's a misprint and I
And-
want to double check before I give you an answer.
And what was the other, there was another phrase, and I looked it up on my phone last time we were talking about this because I didn't want to look like a fool, not knowing what it was. But there's another acronym besides ADU, and it's an attached DADU, which is detached.
Attached.
Which is what I think in my and probably all of our minds, we think of as an ADU as detached. But Courtney touched on that a second ago. An ADU can be like the garage of the house being turned into that's an ADU. And the DADU is the detached, because in my mind, it's always a separate, like a mother-in-law, that's what it used to be.
That's what I
Is this
thought
the
an
ADUs
ADU
also?
was.
Correct,
Yes,
that's
it's
what I thought it
DADU.
was too, so.
Okay.
So that's important that we capture that in our code.
And the difference
well.
between the DADU and having a, duplex, because depending on the definitions, you could argue that a duplex could be two detached dwelling units. Is that it would be the charges. So if they're saying that they're applying for an ADU or a DADU, then we can only charge them at a certain rate. And the development requirements are different versus there's lots of examples where if we allowed a duplex and ADUs, right, they could build additional units. And then call two of them ADUs as well as an additional unit that would be their duplex unit.
Yeah, this can really create a life of its own. This can really, which again, it's not a bad thing necessarily, but Just real quick, because I already skipped my mind, what Kenny was talking about earlier, and well, what we've been discussing is there's the part of it where if they want to condominiumize it and sell it, what that looks like as far as separate connections, but we as the city, now that the primary residence does not have to be owned, or the primary owner doesn't have to live in that residence, we as the city get into all kinds of problems with billing. Because now we can't go to the homeowner that's right there. They'll say that I've got all those rented out. And we don't have control of who goes in there, nor do we want, but we have to figure out the billing of these ADUs, what the water bill and sewer bill and all that. Not, I mean, the dollar figures, we need to know what that'll look like too, but we also need to know how do we capture that without, because we've had issues just with somebody walking away from their primary residence, getting paid when the house sells and all of that. And this is gonna really explode that problem. In my mind, maybe I'm making up stuff, but
No, if they're sharing their utility meters, then it is.
right, when they share the meter, then they're saying they're not paying me, I'm kicking them out. Well,
Yeah.
the city can't kick them out because,
We would continue to bill the property owner in that case,
Right.
but yeah,
Right.
it becomes problematic.
Hmm.
Clarity on the square footage, we cannot have a maximum that is less than 1,000 square feet. So they can build up to 1,000, we can impose 1,000 square foot maximum. It can't be on anything less than that, or we could choose to have a higher maximum, but we can't go under 1,000 square feet.
and there's no minimum.
There's no minimum. I think that the IBC may have some minimums, but there's no minimum
For-
attached to the
For
house bill.
ingress, egress.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
right, exactly. Yeah, so the International Building Code has minimum dimensional standards for different areas in a dwelling that together create, that was the conversation with tiny houses.
That's exactly where I was gonna go next. What happens when it has wheels on it?
Yeah.
It's, they call it a DADU,
It would
whether
have
it's
to
an
have
actual
utility
RV
hookups.
or
No,
it's
it's gotta be
a,
hooked up.
or, right, they can hook it up and then unhook and drive away.
Ground utilities, so we can require actual ground utility hookups compliant with the International Building Code.
But the structure itself, we can't say it can't have wheels. They can,
No.
right,
Oh.
okay. I'm just, this thing is
Yeah.
going to grow into a life of its own. Anyway,
Councilmember Burgess.
So when you have a mobile home, as far as like getting a loan for a mobile home, if you're putting it on a piece of property, if you don't get a title elimination, it's still considered a mobile home. So wouldn't we be able to say if it's going to be a home on the property that wouldn't they have to get rid of the wheels?
the state will say no, but what we can do.
Or design standards. So I think that the difference between something that has wheels and something that has a permanent foundation per IBC is not a lot. You could use cinder block, right? There's different ways to
Yeah.
kind of work around it in order to create a permanent foundation. What the biggest difference is those utility hookups. But now with the new rules, and if we can share utilities, which I believe you can, but I would just want to double check. It does create implications. And so then you have, what is the difference between in the looks from what you're wanting versus potentially not wanting.
And I don't think, we don't need to get into the realm of banning a contemporary looking home. But if we create a standard for the
I was
homes, then we
wondering.
can say those need to match. But we don't have to ban anything necessarily, but then we can say, okay, well, if they're gonna if somebody wants to
Needs to
build this.
complement it.
Yeah, right, or, you know, and again, we don't need to be heavy-handed, people
Right.
build.
Yeah.
Literally, somebody will
But-
turn a chicken coop into a DAU, you know,
You don't want. like-
especially when it's already, that's a whole nother twist that. If it already doesn't meet X setback standards, let's say there's a chicken coop somebody built literally onto the fence. And now they don't have to move it, they can add on to it, but they can't add on.
Right.
Towards the neighbor, obviously into the neighbor's property, but this is a whole just crazy animal that is. People can use for good or bad.
I have another question. So as far as the duplex and triplex go, wouldn't a duplex be already considered two dwellings on one property? So
So you got
couldn't we say they would only be able to put one?
We could say they could put
ADU?
none. So there isn't for duplexes and triplexes, there is no requirement right now to allow an ADU. There is a requirement to allow an ADU in conjunction with a single family residence. But we could say in a duplex, you could have one if we
And-
wanted to allow 3 everywhere.
And as far
We have
as far as the density and that kind
Mhm.
of thing, trying to do what we're supposed to be doing as far as our growth. I don't see a problem in my view as far as having an ADU on a property that already has a duplex. But a triplex would be, there would
already
already be 3 homes, so I
Well,
would say that would have to be.
and the reality is most, and I could be wrong, but just in my brain, was wandering around Buckley as I have for my whole life. Almost all, and I'm sure there's exceptions, then the exception proves the rule. The duplexes are on a parcel that is not gonna be very indicative of
Putting it.
having enough room to do a DADU, but again, they can expand it and boom, that's a rent. I mean, literally something super, a 1-car garage that's not even there. They could build an extra 1-car garage if they can get inside the setbacks. And that's my biggest concern with the safety part of it too, is the DADU versus ADU, that is a huge complication. Because fire and police need to know what that separation is, and they shouldn't have to look at every building permit that comes through the building department to go, how are we getting access to this when we need it for emergencies?
Councilmember Green.
Yeah, I want to go back to the density thing that you touched on, and I agree with everything the mayor's saying, and assume that we have all that figured out.
Yep.
Like, as far as the density management goes, my gut reaction, and I had totally retaining the liberty to change my mind if, better arguments come forward. But I don't see any issue with not permitting ADUs at the duplexes and, if triplexes, I guess if it works, to spread out the density. I think that could be, I mean, not everyone's gonna go out and like throw ADUs in their yard, I mean, some people will, but not everybody. So we're not gonna have just like an ADU village everywhere. But it could definitely, prevent us from having one of those large apartment complexes that we're worried about. And worried about what's the fire department to do about, a 3-story apartment complex. Well, we might not have to worry about that if we allow the densities to get spread out, is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, it could be a blessing if we get everything in
Well,
order.
And I'll just say, you're absolutely right. It's not gonna like spring up, but especially in the duplex, triplex, where they're possibly not always rented out already, there's profit to be made.
No.
Literally day one, and it's not a lot of building expense, especially if you don't have to pay all the GFCs. And it will, in my view, it can easily, hopefully it won't, but we hope is not a great plan. It will spread like wildfire because there's, and again, it's not a terrible thing. That's what the state wants, but is that what we want? And how can we work around it and make it still stay within the bounds of the law, of course, blah, blah, blah.
Councilmember Burbank.
Okay, so I'm going back to the design standards part. So if we did want to look at options for that, to then make sure that AD is matched, that would only apply to new construction or if somebody remodels. So if anybody who makes an ADU on a house that's already built, they can make it whatever they want.
Well,
No.
Okay, that's what I'm, okay.
No, so if we create design standards for single family residential, it would apply citywide. So
Okay.
we'd probably have a lot of non-conforming structures with today's design standards, right? But we're not going to look at any type of enforcement. That would all be grandfathered in.
Okay.
But if they were to come in with a permit for an ADU, we could hold the ADU to the same criteria that we would any new single family residence.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we can make it match, which is kind of what I think the general thought process is, to not have something totally. out of
Because
our-
I would like to see, I don't want to put more work on the planning commission right now, but I would like to see some options of what that could
I
be.
think we can come up with some simple options.
mean,
Because are there other cities that have, are there
Yeah.
other cities that have design standards for like,
Many, and especially
Okay.
right now.
okay,
So I think that it's something that's becoming more and more common,
okay,
but there are a lot that don't, like Buckley.
I mean, I would like to see some options.
And we
just-
want
I
to be
don't know.
careful to not exclude
No.
whatever.
Yeah, not making it so, but just something like, I don't know,
Mhm.
just looking at what.
Somebody can't build a log house in Buckley.
Can you imagine the conversations they're having at the
Not that anybody. will.
Wilkinson Town Council and the Carbonado Town Council on this? I mean, this, because they're part of the state of Washington and they have to allow it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's, again, it's a good thing. It's just, it can really spread
Yeah.
like wildfire and not in a good way.
Yeah, and I think the conversation we're having right now is meant to be proactive, right? We don't have an issue right now. We've had, I think, one permit come in the last 2 years for an ADU.
Okay.
It is not super common, but we are getting asked more and more.
Okay.
And some of the new developments specifically, I think, are planning to include ADUs along with their initial construction because they now can have additional units. So I do think that we're going to see more of these coming. With the new construction, we also haven't, so we haven't run into a problem yet to make this into we have to hurry up and post something that we can't all get behind. But I do think that we can bring some examples forward to
Yeah.
be proactive. And certainly if we have an influx, I will let you all know.
Okay.
And in my Bugs Bunny brain, people are gonna start changing lot sizes to make this. If they can put 2 ADUs, DADUs in the backyard or lot, they're gonna wanna expand the lots, which affects us the opposite way of density. There's so many moving parts to this, but I mean, in my mind, somebody says, I'm gonna build this house and I was gonna sell it for $800,000. But if I can make the lot, especially if they have enough land to expand the parcel an extra 22,000 square feet and drop a couple ADUs in the backyard and I can rent those and this, I mean, it.
Yeah, and we can't restrict them from having 2 ADUs, so they have to meet our setback criteria still. They have to meet the IBC, which is gives a certain distance between structures. So, yeah, 10 feet between structures, so they still have to meet those requirements, but as long as the principle, so well, I have to stop saying that, as long as the existing structure complies with our regulations and is on the minimum lot size required for that zone. So there are cases where that maybe isn't the case, right? We may have some lots that are grandfathered in that are smaller than what would be the minimum requirement today for a lot size. But as long as it meets that lot size, they have the freedom to figure out how to put 2 more units on it, as long as it meets the minimum lot size.
And that can mean.
And we can't
Going up.
restrict beyond a certain point. So if we do have a height limitation, I think I was just looking at the lot, I think it's 24. We can't require that it be less than 24 feet. So they can go up and they can build out, they can build on their property so that it fits within the setbacks.
And
That does override some of our impervious and building coverage potentially. So right now we have a lot of design standards on lots that isn't applicable to ADUs, specific to impervious surface coverage and building lot coverage.
and if they attach it to the structure, that's why I have to get my mind around that DADU thing, because if they attach it to the structure, there is no 10-foot worry.
No,
They just grow the house.
Yep.
As tight to the setbacks that they can apply for a variance. Because some of these houses have a 4 feet between the wall of the house and the property line, and then the overhang is 18 inches. I mean, they're.
variance
feet from-
standards haven't changed and those are hard to get. So we will continue, if that does happen, the city will speak out against, likely would speak out against any variance because we don't want.
Yeah, for fire protection and other things.
Councilmember Sano.
One of the topics that's what they were talking about in planning commission is the 5 foot, they're going back and forth about. Side setbacks only being 5 feet, because isn't it the building code and fire code on it is requirement is 10 foot in between structures, so that's 5 on your property, 5 on mine. Right, so they're looking into only having like a 5 foot setback for the side property, if you're gonna allow them to have. Like be able to be using structures like on alleyways that are 0, they're like, why can't so-and-so be able to build theirs in their backyard with a 5 foot side offset, cause it still meets fire and. Fire and whatever code.
Right.
Generally in the residential, it's 8, but in some places it can be less. If 8 is, you can barely if you need to get in the backyard with that's a whole nother thing, but.
And then the townhomes, cause they're their lot sizes are generous, right?
Mhm.
So they could, and I don't think they're a part of this code, are they?
Townhomes,
They're not included in this, but say
No.
I bought a townhome and then I wanted to move my, build an ADU for my grandma in the back. Right now, I couldn't do that, cause when you buy the townhomes, you own them.
we aren't required. No, so townhomes fit into the same category right now as duplexes and triplexes.
Yeah.
So we have some flexibility still with how we regulate.
And if we get our arms around, I'm just stepping it out, we get our arms around single family. And then we can kind of expand it if, depending how it goes. And my thought would be to restrict it on the duplexes, triplexes, stuff right out of the gate. And then work on, see what this is gonna look like and possibly expand it into that, but that's just my thought.
Thought process when they're like hearing the guys talk at that was that. They think because building costs are so expensive right now, they don't think you're gonna have someone coming and spending $150,000 or $200,000 to build the ADU, and then they think where you're gonna see the actual ADUs be met would be in the duplexes, triplexes, and maybe some townhome lots or something. But they don't think like every Joe Blow is just gonna be able to afford the ADU just to slap up.
Well, there's so many, these shed structures that it meets code, some of them don't
They
even
think
need a
that's where
building.
you'll
permit.
see them put,
Yeah.
the actual building one in their backyard, it's
Yeah.
pretty expensive. If you gotta go spend all the permit fees to hook them separate.
Yes, yeah, there's 150, 200 grand to build.
To build a
thing.
12,000 square foot ADU. I don't know.
Lots of moving pieces, that's for sure. And I don't want to scare anybody off. It's a good thing. It can turn into a.
We're beating this horse
Yeah.
good. Councilmember Bergeson.
So if you're going to put an ADU on your property, do you have to have a line adjustment?
No.
Property line adjustment before you do it?
Not likely in most cases.
It would only be if you were gonna sell one or the other.
I don't even think that you have to have a lot line adjustment for that now with the condominiumizing. So you can have multiple property owners on a single parcel. That's how condominiums
How do
work.
they pay property tax?
Don't know.
Councilmember Asano.
Well, they brought, I can't remember if it was Mr. Garland or one brought up now. So say if I built an ADU.
Yeah.
Or at my house, I built an ADU, I could sell that. And I don't have to go through the short plot process now. So now I can short plot my property. I could turn around if you're allowed to, I could build another one. So you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I haven't wrapped my head around the concept either. In my
Well,
professional career, we've gone in Washington state from not allowing condominiums when I first started to now this. And so I'm also confused
I mean,
by
if you're-
how it would actually work. I personally have never permitted a condominium. So I've never seen it play out.
Cause
And
if your
my
property
attic is
is,
now a condominium.
There are.
if your property is worth $100,000. But you have someone else living on your property in the ADU or someone else's in two of them. And you sell your home,
If you have a.
then who pays the taxes on
Yeah,
all that,
I
all
don't
the land value, you know?
Is the maximum two, no matter the lot size or?
Maximum?
Yeah.
No, the minimum. We could allow more. But the minimum that we have to allow anywhere that there's a single family residence
Is two,
is two.
okay, so we could grow from there, but.
So every single family residential lot is now a triplex lot in our old way of thinking. But those other units we can require that they be a bit smaller.
Yeah, that's something we'll need to put in the code of we want a max of two, because people could do just as.
Do
Whoever-
4 or 6 or 8.
Or they'll do two now and they'll do two in a year and do it,
Mhm.
depending if they've got enough real estate to do DADUs, it could grow out of. And again, no road improvements, or 50% of the utility hookup fee.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Well, you can go down Sumner Buckley Highway and look at a whole bunch of properties with that. You know the ones where they're at. And speaking of design standards, it seems like they have a design standard down the Buckley Sumner Highway, because every one of those new houses looks exactly the same. It's some kind of weird modern farmhouse look type thing.
Oh, are you talking about out past Maris Farms?
Even before
By
that,
Haugens.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Haugen.
Mhm.
So I know that we're, I think is there anything else on this? Be careful.
I got one more.
Councilmember Orsano.
So for that house built in 1337, so after July 23rd, 2023, if that's right, the homeowners associations, I don't even believe can stop it
No,
in their codes.
can't.
Yeah.
We say we can, but
Yeah,
And if
We
your
just-
homeowner associations before 2023, they can, I believe they can stop it, but after that, like, they can't stop them either in their homeowner association.
Yeah, the RCW is RCW 36.70A.681. It's not a very long read, but it's a good read.
is it, can you read that?
It is RCW 36.70A.681.
70, like 70A.
Yep, and there's more to 36.70A is the full section, but 36.70A.681 talks about the limitations of local regulation. So that's, if you're wanting to look at an ADU, that whole chapter would be a good one to read. But in terms of what we're discussing and what we're allowed to do, feel free to familiarize yourself with that. And what we will do next, I will get answers for the questions regarding tax implications. I'm also curious. And then clarification on the fact that it seems like we're allowed to downzone for duplexes and triplexes. Sounds like council would prefer right now, at least for the first draft that you see, to not allow ADUs or DADUs in addition to a triplex. But maybe one in addition to a duplex, so keeping that 3 per lot. And then the answer on shared utility meters. So I will bring back some answers to those questions, and then the planning commission will get busy on drafting some code in addition to what has already been drafting. So revising this and expanding on it and looking at some simple design standards that we could apply to all.
And I'd like to have, planning commission, I mean, it's their bailiwick, but I'd like them to bring Eric into the mix to talk about what that really should be for safety. I mean, there's a lot of cities do a lot of foolish things because they don't intertie that in, but fire is one of the big things when you start building right on top of it another.
Okay.
But they have, I mean, fire department has some pretty wicked cool stuff now and literally water curtains, they can shoot between houses and whatever, but. So then they shrink those setbacks and then it starts and we're gonna have like we had the Buckley fire, there it is right there. Where one building starts and you can't put it out because it just runs and runs and runs.
Yeah.
Anything else on this topic before we put it to bed? It's to bed, so let's go with council comments. I just have 2 questions for city administrator and maybe possibly the mayor. I've noticed the pickleball nets at our court out there are missing. Are they at the youth center or they get stolen?
No, we put them inside for the winter. So we'll be bringing those back out likely in the next month or so.
Okay, so nobody's been out there playing it or
No.
it's just because of the weather? So,
Because of the weather,
okay,
yeah.
perfect. And is the bathroom open at the,
I was
at
gonna
the
ask that too.
So next,
parking lot?
next week you were going to have a final approval on that project. And I said, we don't have electricity to our bathroom yet. So
This has been a while.
it's been 18 months. So I agree. Most recent update I received was that there was some confusion regarding the amount of electricity that we needed to go to the bathroom as well as the dock tape pavilion. And so we needed to make sure through PSC that the size of conduit that was being brought across would fit all of the needs now and in the future. So we weren't having to dig the same hole twice and bring it all over twice and close everything down twice. I think those questions have been answered. Today, we were told to dig the hole and what size it would be, and we should have PSC out soon in order to get that moving.
Perfect. That'll coincide with pickleball nets coming out
Mhm.
when, in the spring, when
Yeah.
people are showing up and boom, there we go.
Mhm.
Other questions around the room, council member Arsanto.
Do we have an update on Miller Park or what's going on over there?
We are waiting for the legislative budget to be finalized. It does look, so we received 2 grants through the state, YAF and COFA. But it looks like both of those programs are going to be funded less than what we originally expected. And so we do not yet know if we're actually going to receive the dollars for either grants. And the reason for that is, of course, because it's the state budget deficit. So they're cutting programs for local parks, as well as it sounds like there was a lot more carryover projects than they expected when they originally awarded the grants. So I won't have a real update until the state is done with their budget. We remain hopeful and optimistic that they're going to fund them, because we did receive the grants, but there's a chance that they won't be funded. If that is the case, we do still have resources to be able to do some parts of the construction, and we will bring that forward with council for options.
I was meaning what they got going on right now.
Oh,
How it's
Bedloe.
unfinished.
We have collected liquidated damages. They are on a very tight timeline for giving us weekly project updates. I was told that it should be finished soon. But we've been on top of the contractor, Grain Osborne has, and we have started to collect liquidated damages, and will continue to if they don't meet the benchmarks that have been set out for them in the next, I think it's 8 weeks.
For council comments, questions,
When everybody's done.
Hmm?
If everybody's,
Mayor, please.
Okay.
See nobody else.
I'll try to hit some of these I'm planning, my thought process is to redesign the city logo that has not been redesigned for 30-ish plus years. We went through one change from the above the snow, below the fog, I think it was. And so.
Above the fog, below the snow.
Yeah, that one. So with the new city hall and with the web design being changed, I think it's probably time that we kind of look at that. So if there's anything you love and you don't want to see leave the logo, or things that you don't like I'm open to, we've got a graphic designer that's gonna fairly reasonably do us, give us some options, but the more information we give her, the better. So myself personally, I think there's far too many colors in there, but and some cities have gone to a super simple, like a stick figure trees. I'm not necessarily a fan of that, but or the mountain or the sun or the whatever, whatever that, want to add Bigfoot in there like the police department did, whatever. Lots of things. If you haven't seen that, there's a little Bigfoot on the police department's logo. And but yeah, anything like that. I know I'm just kind of throwing that on you here, but we're not doing it tomorrow, but please reach. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The town of Wilkinson actually just had our 5th grade students redesign like their flag. So like if you're looking for community outreach, I think that would be a cool thing for Glacier students or the high school to have buy-in to their community, but
Give like input.
yeah, give input.
Then we're gonna wind up with maroon and gold again.
I know, yeah,
That would require them to have a basic understanding of, which is.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not insurmountable.
yeah,
A basic understanding of history, how we came here, what the territory of Washington was. I'm all for that. I would like to see before we did anything, well, including students, which I think is a great idea, and it just doesn't have to be middle school students, it could be high school students, it could be elementary students, all of them, is to have this is what we have, and these are the things that we're coming up with. What do you think? So not to ever forget about this one, but let's look at the iterations
mhm,
of why. I find it a little ironic that, and it's not a bad thing that we have there's a reason why we're doing this here in Buckley with a new city hall, and yes, this is very busy. I get that. All the while in the state of Washington, when there's crimes rampant and everything else, they want to redesign the state flag at the same time. So I find it ironic for different reasons. We have a good reason to, yes. Anyways, I find it ironic.
And I did drive through Ording today, just by chance, and they have, it said Centennial Community, not Heritage Community. So meaning that I think they were established the same year we were, I believe, or pre-1900. And, so whatever that means, so, you know, if we want,
I think there is in the state law, I think there is a definition of those type of communities and what it, when they were incorporated.
Yeah.
At what point they were. Cause it has to be.
Yep, and I just didn't know if it had changed to Centennial, because Courtney told me that Heritage was, and I didn't know that, that was pre-1900. And so I didn't know if they changed that to Centennial or whatever. And again, we're not doing it tomorrow, but anything you want to throw at Courtney or email or text us or whatever. But I'm all for, you know, of course, the more cooks we put in the kitchen, the more it's gonna be hard to pick a thing, but I obviously want
I want to explore what Councilmember Anderson talked about, getting some of these kids involved. And give them a shot, and they would just need a little snapshot, and they know how to look stuff up.
Yep,
Right.
and I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they work on the police departments? The high school did, worked on the police department's logo as well.
They put the Bigfoot in there?
They, yeah.
I think it would be a great project for Mrs. Lamont's leadership class, and we only have 66 more days of school this year, but that doesn't mean they can't look at that. And
Who's counting?
Someone's counting.
Which-
Yeah, I'm like, come on, you
white
guys
board, my-
ruined it for me.
On the screensaver, open your phone, let's see it. Yeah, that's,
I think that's a great idea.
and I'll just throw out there too, that just because you mentioned the Bigfoot thing again, was it. That's something that police departments all over, like, I need one of those patches for whatever reason, that's
Funny.
that's quite a popular thing.
I've never seen them up here, but somebody has.
I ran into them in Packwood one time, but that's a whole nother story.
Want to hear this story?
Anybody else? Hearing and seeing none, we will adjourn the Buckley Council study session at 7:20 PM on the 4th of March.
We have executive session,
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we got an exec session.
Don't we have to adjourn that and go to executive? I withdraw my adjourning. And we have to move into an executive session to discuss
Secret
position outlawed by the RCW, and that's going to require our community members to step outside
5 minutes.
for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. If we have Okay, it is 7:33 PM. This is the Buckley City Council study session coming back from an executive session. And from this, I will once again go around the room. Is there any more comments or questions?
I've said enough.
I think we've all exhausted. It's been a good study session. So at 7:34, we will conclude our Buckley City Council study session. And we'll be here next week for a regular meeting.